Hey guys, welcome to Kittywitty Papercraft headquarters. Now this is just my craft room, but it is where all my stuff for my business happens. And right now I'm just kind of panning out for you so you can see the whole room. I'm going to actually back out into the doorway and you can kind of see right where I come in, and I'll give you an overview of the whole room first. So this is a pretty small room. I come in, and forgive me for the camera work. I've never done a film, like a video like this before, and I'm going to try not to go around too fast or be shaky. So just kind of bear with me with that. So yeah, this is my space, and it is a pretty small space, I think. I'm very fortunate that I'm able to have a dedicated room to do my work in. I realize not everyone has a whole room that they can use. So I feel very blessed that way. And this is our quote unquote guest room, but we never have guests. So a few years ago, and while I talk, I guess I'll just kind of move around so you can kind of see some things so it doesn't get boring. And then I'll go through the room step by step and share with you how I store things and all that good stuff. But a few years ago, I think it was only about 3 years ago, this room was really not being used. This desk over here was here with a computer, and that is something my husband had set up. He uses 2 monitors in his work, so this is set up kind of for him. And the rest of the room was just filled with junk, like kind of the stuff you don't know what to do with. And when he went on a business trip for a week, like 3 years ago, I cleaned out the whole room. And I don't even know how I did it. I think I just went and I got a bunch of bins, and I basically put everything that was in here in the attic. And I started out with just a few things. I went to Target and I bought that desk there, this white desk right here, and this bookshelf right here, and I bought this chair right here. And I got the chair from IKEA, I think. And that was it. And this room had that brown desk in it, and then my Target desk and bookshelf, they were kind of over here. My desk was in the corner, and I had the bookshelf. I think it was probably on the same wall there. And that's it. And it's kind of a long story how I got started. I won't share that on this video, but I started out with bullet journaling, believe it or not. I wasn't even crafting. And in 3 years, it has evolved, obviously. And I have expanded this space. It is where I have my absolute favorite collectibles, all of my vintage children's stuff, toys and books and my baby planters, and all the stuff I really love is in this room with me. And I find it very inspiring in my work and just in my everyday life. So this is the space where I'm at now. And my husband does not use this room really for work too much. He had set it up with the intention of this being kind of like his home office, but he usually works on his laptop downstairs. So I kind of was feeling okay about taking over this room. And I still kind of have it set up there in case he, feels like he needs to work with the 2 screens, so we'll work that out. But so his desk is still in here. And I would like to eventually replace that with another work table. But yeah, that's another conversation for another time. So let me come over here. I hope I'm not going too quickly. So let's see. I think we'll start on this side of the room. And I've got that lamp on. It's kind of making a glare. But this is my desk, my work table, actually, I call it. Let me close this door because the hallway's got a bunch of crap in it. We don't want to look at that. I cleaned up this room this morning a little bit before the video, and I will tell you this is a little bit of a cheating because my room is not usually this neat. I am pretty organized and the room stays pretty clean, but there were some things in here, like my work table had a stack of papers on the corner on the end, and the desk had a bunch of papers on it, so I kind of stuck those out in the hallway. But anyway, so this is my work table. I adore this work table. I don't think I've ever shared this with you guys, but this is my IKEA work table, and I'm going to put this video on YouTube, and I will put in the description box like some of the things that are in this room, like links to where I got them, and the names of them, because I can't remember all of the IKEA names. This is a sit-stand desk, and I really, really love this table. I stand when I work. I cannot sit. I will sit occasionally, but I really prefer to stand when I work. So I've got a stool that is adjustable that I do use sometimes. Actually, when I'm standing, I'll sometimes put my leg up on the stool, like my knee on the stool, just to take pressure off my back. But this desk is awesome because you can sit or stand at it, and it has this handle here that slides out, and then it just cranks. Let me see if I can do this while I'm on the phone. Let's see. So this takes it. Is it doing it? Yeah, it's going down. Or you can raise it up, and it goes pretty high. I don't have it even all the way up, but yeah, you can raise and lower it. And this desk was $249, I think. So not expensive, not cheap, but I think for $249 to have that kind of flexibility is awesome. And so I really, really love it. And like if I do want to sit, I can lower the top, and I can adjust my stool. The stool is also from IKEA. So it gives me a lot of different options, and I love it. And I also love that the surface is really big. It's really deep. I don't know the dimensions off the top of my head. They actually have two sizes. Width-wise, this is actually the smaller of the two. I want to say it's like 42 inches wide, 47. I don't know. I'm bad with guessing numbers, sizes of things when I just look at it. But they actually have one that's even wider than this one, like, side to side. But this one fit perfectly in this space, and it gives me a ton of space to work because I need a lot of space. I spread out when I'm working, and it's really helpful to me to have this kind of space. My paper trimmer lives on the end of my table all the time because I use it obviously a ton in what I do. So I also keep all of my most frequently used tools right on my table. So I find that is really helpful instead of having those packed away, obviously. You guys are probably the same way. Scissors, the things that you use all the time. So I use my baby nursery planters to corral all of my tools. I really like to use vintage wherever I can to store my stuff. Sometimes it's not as practical to do that, so I do use, modern, regular stuff that I buy, but wherever I can, I like to use vintage. So I will show you all these little guys. Here's my coffee mug. These hold my most frequently used glue, my glue stick, and my glossy accents. And so I'm doing this with one hand. I had originally wanted to have my son do the video part while I just kind of walked around the room, and I had both hands free, but our schedules are not syncing up. So I thought, you know what, this is never going to get done if I don't just do it myself. So I'm trying to hold the camera with one hand and work with the other hand. So we will see how this goes. My glue dots. So these are the things I use like all the time. Glue dots and these two glue sticks. So they are right there on my table. My corner puncher. I don't even have that in my, where I store my punches. I just leave it right on the table, and my packing tape for orders. And then under here, this is just decorative, just a little baby bank. And then I have some washi that I'm using right now on my packages. And this was my grandmother's little tomato that I keep my needle and my little needle grip that I use for sewing my journals, and some sequins. These little planters hold decorative pens. So I don't really use these too much, but back when I was into planners, I was part of the Planner Society, and all these like gorgeous pens would come in the kits. So those are all in this little guy. and my vintage label maker that I love. That's not going to come out too easily. I think there might be something else in there with them. But I've got my label maker in this one, and I have my adhesive tapes once they get small enough to fit in this little container, and my adhesive dots are in there. So just kind of all the things you just need to grab almost every time you're doing some kind of paper crafting. I like to have right on my table. So all of my favorite rollers and scissors and the 2-hole punches that I use the most. And then these are my pens that I use every day. And I've got my tiny attacher. And what else? Oh, my crocodile is in here. And my utility knife. Oh, this is a, what do you call the thing? The edger, paper rougher upper on the edges. I forget what that's called. And my heavy duty blade utility knife that I use to cut my book covers off when I'm making junk journals. Those are all in this guy. And I don't use these all the time. When I was doing Bible journaling more, I use these more often, but they're so big. They were kind of hard to store, so I just put those in this container because they fit them nicely, and that just kind of worked out. And those are just some little decorative things. Sorry about the glare from the lamp. And there's a window behind me too, so that's causing a glare. And I just have some decorative items here from my collections that just kind of make me smile when I'm working. So I'll go above the desk now. Let's see if I can get up there and show you. Mostly what's up here is some of my favorite collectibles, toys, and some more planters. But I do have some practical uses for some of these items up here. So these little nursery containers, they hold my jewelry making findings, like jump rings and eye pins and that sort of thing are in these 4. And I've got a little vintage, it's like a baby planter, but it actually is like the shape of a mug, just has some vintage button cards in them. Distress markers are in that planter right there. This little planter has more button cards in it. My Humpty Dumpty, I love Humpty Dumpty. I don't know why, but he's like a really favorite vintage thing of mine. I just started collecting those this year, but he just has some party horns in him just for fun. I found those at an antique shop. They were really cheap, so I grabbed those and they're just in there. And then there's a milk glass canister back there, and that has my extra adhesive rolls and glue sticks in them. And then I've got my favorite vintage board game boards. I just love the graphics on those, Forest Friends and Candyland. So along the back, I just have some decorative kind of items like those boards and some of my big linen books and coloring books. And I've got, the baby scale decoration. There's my bobby pins they were a vintage find that I will be making like little pocket tags from. And then I have a little collection of birthday candles in that glass canister here. And then check out these little die cuts. Aren't they awesome? It's Dick, Jane, and Sally from the books. I just found those actually this week. They were cutouts that teachers would use to talk about the characters in the books. And they're like little stands, and they're like cardboard, and I just love them. So I added them to my shelf. And then I've got my washi tape in 2 different places in here. I store them in these jars that I got from Target's Dollar Spot, like, I don't know, several years ago. And I also have washi in one other spot over here. I have them on 3-inch binder rings. And I just took advantage of the fact that these bars are open, and I have them hanging on here. So I like these 3-inch rings. They're big, but they're not too big, so I can kind of sort them by like color or style. So those are all my washi. That's how I store my washi. And back to the shelf, there's a couple canisters in the back that just have loose yarn, like yarn that I've cut that are too short for making tassels with. And then the rack here obviously has all of my carded vintage yarn, and that rack is a vintage find too. I love that rack. It's really lightweight, so I can just reach up there and I pull the whole rack down when I'm ready to make tassels. And I've got some roller stamps on that little corral and my flashcards here. So I like that the vintage stuff is, it kind of doubles as decor in the room, but it's also practical because I use all that in my journaling, so journal making. So it's kind of nice. I will keep the boxes once they're empty, but they are filled with cards right now. And something else I wanted to kind of touch on, I don't want to go too far into it because I know you guys just want to see, like, you know, the room and the stuff in here. But I think that, and I'm curious what you guys think when you see the whole tour. I don't feel like I have a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of supplies. And I'm curious what you guys think. I've seen other like tours and other people's rooms, and I feel like they have so much more stuff, but I feel like I have plenty. I actually have more than I really need. And you'll see once we get into like the scrapbook papers and some of the ephemera, I don't think I have a whole lot, and I don't think you need a whole lot, you know, to be able to create. I mean, I have a business making journals and I've made over 100 journals in the last like year and a half. And this is all that I have that I use to make those journals. And like I said, I have more than enough. So you don't really need a ton of stuff to be able to be creative and be pretty prolific with what you make. So one thing I do is I kind of keep my space the way it is without adding more to it. So that kind of doesn't make sense. Like these are my flashcards right here. And I have one other box that has some flashcards that didn't come in boxes I'm going to show you. But this to me feels like that's enough. Like I don't have any place else to put those kind of boxes, so I don't get any more. And I won't buy any more until I use up what's in those boxes. And all those boxes are full. And it is hard because sometimes you'll come across something and you're like, oh, it's a really good deal. It's a really good price. And especially with vintage, like once it's gone, it's gone. So there's that kind of fear of missing out, you know, the whole FOMO thing. But I have found that you will always find more. There's so much out there, even with vintage, even with the one of a kind that vintage is, there's so much out there. And once that's gone, there will be more. And you will never not be able to find what you need for a particular project when you go to look for it. That has been 100% true for me all the time. So I have kind of relaxed about worrying that I won't find that thing in the future. It may be a little bit different, but you will be able to find something similar that you love. It won't be a problem. So I'm just saying that from my experience. I know in the last week when we've been kind of talking about that survey I did, asking people what their struggles are, and a lot of people said that they have too much stuff or they have a lot of trouble organizing all the stuff that they have. So I think it starts with not having too much, or if you have a lot already, going through what you have and really being ruthless about donating a lot of it. I think a lot of people could probably do with a lot less than they already have. And that's like a whole another topic. So anyway, let me get back to the tour. But I'm really passionate about that, and I love talking about that. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Also, like maybe if you didn't do that little survey that I put out last week asking like, what's your biggest struggle with making junk journals? If scrapbook supplies and paper crafting supplies and managing them and organizing them is a concern for you or a problem that you feel like you have, I'd love to hear more about that. And I'm going to do some more videos, and I might write some blog posts about that because I have some more ideas on that. So Okay, back to the tour. I'm so sorry. Oh, do you see my little Dick, Jane, and Sally poster? So I just put that up too. And that came with the paper dolls that I got. It was like this whole set for teachers. And I had a booklet with like teaching ideas, and it had that little poster in it. So I thought I would just pop that on my wall there. So this little container this was my husband's. He went to a different system for storing like nuts and bolts and things. So I took this out of the garage, and this just has tiny embellishment type things. Like you can see some of them are labeled. A lot of them aren't. A lot of my buttons are in here, and my mini paper clips, my tiny little paper clips that I use to attach ephemera in my journals are in here. So little doodads there, field guides. These cream cheese boxes, these vintage cream cheese boxes hold my distress glitter and stickles. Sorry, that's out of focus. Ooh, I don't know how to fix that. So those boxes have those items in there. And this is my Betty Crocker vintage recipe library cards and some vintage buttons in there. So this shelf here is also from IKEA, and this is what replaced their how do you say it? Expedit. Why am I not thinking of how to say that? But it's called Calyx now, Kallax, and it's basically the same thing. I think they just made the sides and the top thicker or something. But these are just Calyx cubes, and they just kind of, I got the small set because they fit in this space here. And this one has, 4 cubes in it, and I love this thing. So it's nice and deep, and I guess I'll just go by shelf and show you what's on here. I don't know if you want me to open all the containers. It's going to be kind of hard to do with one hand, but maybe I'll show you some things. So this is a vintage, and I've shared some of this on Instagram before, so forgive me if you've seen this already. This is a 45 record case. Called a platter pack, and I use this to hold my vintage greeting cards, and I have them right now. They're just separated by holiday, even though I don't use them that way in my journals, so I may go through and reorganize this maybe more by color. So I haven't done that yet, but this is vintage greeting cards, and postcards are in here also. And again, like this is what I limit myself to. This thing is already, you can see it's pretty full. So I'm trying not to buy any more until I use up what is in this thing. And this is the case for my vintage label maker. This is just empty right now. And this metal file bin has, this is vintage too. Let me see if I can open it from here. I always forget how to open it. It's harder with one hand. So I just have vintage envelopes and bags in here mostly, and there's a couple file folders that I have some loose book pages. So pages that obviously were torn out of books are in there. So that's pretty much all that's in that. Let me put this guy back. Oh, I can't get that in there. I'll just leave that on my desk. How about that? All right. So on this side, just some vintage boxes. This has some guest checks in it. Most of my supplies that are in my junk journal supply kit, like the guest checks and the library cards and things, are in here. And I've got more downstairs because my mom is actually helping me make up those kits right now. So a lot of the supplies are downstairs. But I use guest checks a lot. So I have them in this little vintage box. And these are, I'm going to share these at Christmas time because that's really special. That's my favorite vintage ephemera find ever. And this box also has Christmas stuff. These are Christmas cards, and these are just different Christmas ephemera, like tags and seals and things like that, like small ephemera. I tend to keep my Christmas and Halloween stuff separate from my other ephemera just because I have more of that kind of stuff, and I really only use those during that time of year. So I do keep those things separate. And I'm not going to get this one out. I'm going to show you my other ones down here. But this is a large photo, what do they call this? A large photo bin, I think it's called. And this is from Michaels. It's the Recollections brand. And they just had them like 70% off this week. They might still be that, which is a really, really good deal because they're regular like 40 bucks. They were 70% off. And these hold 4x6 containers in them. And I absolutely love these for holding small vintage ephemera. I'm trying to get this down with one hand, and it's really heavy. Ooh, let's see. Here I go. Let me put this down on the floor. I can show you. So this is for my small vintage ephemera. Like I said, I like to use vintage containers whenever I can to hold my stuff, but sometimes that is just not practical. And I really like to separate types of things as much as I can, just because it makes it easy to find things. And it also lets me know like when I get low on one type of thing. So like this, for example, is recipe cards, vintage recipe cards in here. And there's a lot of space left in there. So that kind of tells me that, yeah, that's something I can add more of to my collection of recipe cards. So I still got lots of space in there. So yeah, I mean, this just has all different kinds of ephemera. I've got milk caps in here. I've got a couple containers of those. I won't go through every single one. I've got my vintage seed packets. I've got several containers of those. What's in here? Let's see. Oh, these are coasters and coin wrappers. I think there's a couple of those in there. Little like merchandise coupons. And this one's just kind of like a miscellaneous bag or box. And I know what's in every single one just because I go through these all the time. Always pulling stuff out. So I know what's in everything, so I don't label. These are all vintage tickets. Tickets. So I don't label everything, but you certainly could. But like I said, I don't feel like I have so much that I can't keep track of, you know, what's what and what's where. So I do not label my containers at all. So, but that works for me. So something else might work for you. And over here in this square, I've got, this is just up for a decorative thing because I feel like my room is like Lollipop Town. I love that little book. So I've got some containers, vintage filler papers in this one, and the bottom one just has some vintage notebook papers also. And this is how I store my ledger paper. So I have some pads stacked up here, and then let me switch my hand here. Some of my longer, like some ledger papers, sorry, I'm trying to do the camera at the same time and it's hard. Like these really long pads, I put right here, and these shelves are really deep. I think they are maybe 14 inches deep, something like that. So that's really nice. I can fit those long pads in here. And then this is like a magazine holder. And I do want to show you this, and it's really heavy. Let me get this one down. I'll put it up on my desk. So this is how I do my ledger paper. I have a few actual ledger books in here, but then the loose pages, I buy a lot of my ledger paper on Etsy, and so I'm out of breath. I buy a lot of my paper on Etsy, and so I buy them in individual sheets. Like sellers will sell them in packs of like 10 or 25. And so I put them in, let me take one out to show you. I put them in these bags. So I'm trying to get this in the whole camera here. So these are just big Ziploc bags. These are like 12 by 12 bags that scrapbook paper comes in, and I save those bags, sorry. And I use them to store my ledger paper in, and I separate them by color. So like this bag has yellow sheets in it. And Like this one, let's see. This one is handwriting paper. So that has its own bag. And this one is kind of greens. So green ledger papers. And some of them aren't ledger papers. I'm calling them ledger papers, but really like this, this sheet in the back. Sorry about the light. I probably should do this on the floor. Let me turn the light out. There we go. This is ledger paper, right? So that's ledger paper. Sometimes I refer to like any of these kind of papers as ledger paper, but they aren't technically. Like sometimes there's like order forms. Trying to think of examples of different kinds. Like invoicing, that kind of thing, but I use them as pages in my journals. So I have them all separated by color, color families, I guess you could say. So this one is all like beiges, creams, and some of these have like this folder in here, like a file folder, and it's just an old file divider kind of thing, and that's just for sturdiness in here, so these stand up straight. So that's why I have that in there. Yeah, so these are just the different colors. What I say, handwriting paper. I've got green ones in there, red and white, which I'm almost out, as you can see. I just have a couple. So again, like sorting things and kind of separating them as much as possible really helps for knowing how much you have of each thing. So like papers with red on them, obviously I like to use those at Christmas time, and I know that I'm going to need to get more before I start my Christmas junk journals. So all the red ones are in here, and this one is pinks, and well, I mean, you can kind of guess, right? And these are blues. So each one of those colors is in a separate bag, and I will put all this stuff away when we're finished. So that was on this shelf here, excuse me. And over here, with that guy. So here's some more of those bins. Like I said, playing cards, I mean, all kinds of vintage ephemera. I got bruised on my hand, sorry. So I don't know if you want me to show you like all the different stuff I have in both of these bins, but anything that is small ephemera, like the size of a playing card on down, you know, something that would fit in a 4x6 case are in those bins there. So the next shelves are my scrapbook paper. So I have a good amount of scrapbook paper because obviously I use a ton of it in my journal making, but I don't think a whole ton of paper. I really stick to a couple makers that I love, and I'm okay with that. There's so many manufacturers out there, and I love Maggie Holmes, and that's probably makes up the bulk of my paper. And of course, October Afternoon, but they're not around anymore, so I will just kind of use what I have of that. But the way I have my paper order, this, I'm sorry, I just got a message on my phone that it's recording into a separate video now. So this may get put up into 2 parts, we'll see, because I'm going over 30 minutes. But I have my paper, some paper out here in my room, and then when we go into my closet, you'll see I also have paper in there. And I store the papers that I use most often, my favorite papers, out here in my room. And I wanted to have the space on this shelf to have other things, like the frequent things I reach for all the time, like my vintage ephemera and my ledger papers and my most frequently used scrapbook papers on the shelf. I could have put more of these little trays in here, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, so I could have more paper out here, but I wanted to have other things at my fingertips, so that's why I only have a little bit of my paper out here. But these trays I also got from IKEA, and I really love them. So the funny thing is, I'm not going to take this whole thing out. They're kind of heavy, but they fit perfectly in the cube, but they aren't as deep as the cube. So I didn't realize that when I bought them. I thought they fit 12 by 12 paper. They actually fit 8.5 by 11 paper. So they don't go all the way to the back. So I'm going to show you how I got around that. So I've got my 12 by 12 paper on here, and the shelves actually push all the way in, because you can see they really are meant for 8.5 by 11 paper, but there's a back to these cubes. It's like it's a whole square that's metal, and you have to put it together, you know, because it's IKEA, but you put it together and it fits right in the cube, but it doesn't go all the way to the back. But there is a back on this cube, is what I'm trying to say. And if I pull the shelf out, I can put the 12 by 12 paper in here, and then the paper just stops at the back of this cube. So not the cube of this shelf, but of the little paper rack. So yeah, and then I just push the entire paper sorter thing here into the shelf. So the edge of this shelf here, this little pull-out tray, I should say, comes to the end of the shelf. I hope that makes sense. So this really isn't designed for 12 by 12 paper, but it works great because the shelf is so deep, and I can just kind of, you know, manipulate it a little bit to fit my 12 by 12 paper. So I've got my Maggie Holmes papers from the Bloom and Chasing Dreams collections on these first 3 trays, and then I've got carousel papers here. This bottom one actually is not a slide out tray, so that's just sitting on the shelf. And then over here, I have some of my favorite non-Maggie Holmes and non-October Afternoon papers. So I have 2 trays, and these 2 right here. So it's like Pink Paisley and Jen Hadfield, and you know, some of my other favorite manufacturers are on these 2 here. And like this tray is mostly like pinks and purples and things, maybe blues. And then this tray has more like oranges and yellows and greens on it. So I divided those up that way. And then these 2 are October Afternoon papers. And this bottom one is more Maggie Holmes, just because I didn't have any place else to put it. But these are the newer collections like Willow Lane and Flourish and Heritage. So that is how I have these papers that I use most often. And I will show you the rest of them when we go in the closet. And then the very bottom of my shelf is my beading supplies. So those 2 bins over there are just kind of like, not necessarily tassel making supplies, but just other kind of little embellishment supplies. Like there's eyelets in there and bottle caps when I was making clips and things like that. And these bins right here hold all of my beads for tassel making, and I actually hate these bins. I believe I got these at Michael's, and I don't want to replace them because I bought, you know, 5 of them or so. And they work fine. It's just that the dividers in them slide out so easily. So yeah, I don't even recommend these. But like if I breathe on this the wrong way, like one of the little dividers will pop up, and then all the beads start sliding underneath, and it turns crazy, and I can't close the things when the lid when that happens. So I just recently had to go through and kind of fix them all up, but that kind of drives me crazy. But I do like being able to divide them by like color and type. So yeah, that's in there. And then I've got some other scrapbook papers in this magazine holder. These are like solids and some decorative like 12 by 12 papers. I keep all of my pattern papers here and in my closet. So over here, moving around the room, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. So thank you for hanging out with me here. I hope this isn't, I'm not droning on too much. This is a little doll hamper. So either a child's hamper, it's pretty small though. I think it's like maybe 18 inches tall. But I love this thing, and I use it to store my sewing patterns. I actually have sewing patterns in a couple different containers because I can't fit them all in here. I have one more container in my closet that has them, but that's how I use that guy. And then over here is my bookshelf that has a lot of decorative things on it. A lot of my little toys and collectibles are on here. Sorry, I'm adjusting my microphone here. Okay. There we go. So the little cubby container here, I got this at Home Goods. This was just a super lucky random find one day, and the color of this, like the aqua, it's not showing up exactly on this on the video, it looks like, but it's really the same color as the aqua in my vintage toy dresser, and they both fit perfectly on the top of my bookshelf. So I was really excited to find that. And I use all my little squeeze punches and small punches are sorted in that little cubby thing. And this little rack just has my favorite, these are my personal collection Junior Elf books that I won't be turning into journals. The ones I use for my journals are in my closet. So I just put these out on display. And as I mentioned, my little toy dresser, this is my favorite vintage find ever, I think. It just was a super lucky find. It was in my local antique shop, and it was that dresser and this little toy chair right there. And those were sold as a set, and I think I squealed when I saw that. So this little toy dresser, in the top shelf, I just have, oh, there goes Humpty. Oh no, he always falls off. My Prima flowers are in the top drawer. It's a little hard to do with one hand. This one's even harder. And this bottom drawer just has my box washi tape. So yeah, I do have more washi too. I forgot about that. But these are like box sets. So I like to keep them in their sets to kind of keep the same kind of colors and patterns together. And I don't think I can shut that. There we go. And then below the dresser, I have my little readers. And these are my vintage readers, and those are all the readers that I have. So once those are used up, I will get more, and I love them, and it is hard to resist buying them every time I see them, but you know, just trying to be cognizant of what I'm spending on supplies is always important. So I just kind of limit myself that way. I'm like, whatever fits under there, that's all I'm going to get. And once I use them up, I will replace them as I have space. So that's kind of how I kind of help myself manage my supplies. And these are just some of like the little library cards I made in this little container, and just some clips. And this is just these awesome little tiny vintage trinkets just for fun. Aren't they awesome? And I've got my button cards in here, and there's more washi in that jar there. Forgot I had that. I have to finish making my charm tassels this weekend, so those are the beads for that. And then down on this shelf, you've probably seen me share these vintage doll suitcases. And let me take these down. I'll just open one of them. So all three of these have my trims in them. So I love these little doll suitcases. So like this one has my baby trim and my chevron tape, and then the other two have pom-pom trim, and Rick Rack is in the other one. So love, love, love using these for storage. So any kind of like box, you know, shaped things are a great alternative to bins. I mean, over here, like I would like to get vintage boxes of some sort for these, but for right now, these are just boxes from Michael's, and I had these from a long time ago. And these hold my punches. So these are large punches in here, and these are also like even larger punches than what's in that one, plus border punches. I came across a lot on eBay of like, I don't know, it was like 15 border punches for like $4 or something a while ago. So I grabbed those, and those are all in there. Let's see, I'll go over to this shelf here. So down here, again, none of these are vintage boxes except this one. And I've got my Faber-Castell markers in that box. And this one has colored pencils, and this one has distress markers in them. So I don't use those supplies as much anymore. That was more when I was Bible journaling, but that's how I have those things stored. This box, let's see, not that this is anything special here, but sometimes it's fun to peek inside people's boxes, right? These are just strings, twine that are on like cards in here. So I have more like ribbon and twine and stuff that are on spools in my closet, and I will show you that. But these are on cards. I kind of hate when they're separated. I like to keep like supplies with like supplies. So, you know, it would be nice to have all of my like ribbon and twine together, but sometimes it doesn't quite work out that way. And as long as you kind of know where everything is and you don't have too much, I think that it is very manageable, and that doesn't bother me. So you got to just find, you know, a system that works for you. I don't even know if I would call what I have here a system, but you know, it's just a way of organizing my stuff. So basically it's just similar things are all together, and I like to separate things into individual containers as much as I can. Like I said, that just helps me kind of keep track of how much I have, and sorry, I lost track of my thought there. So it just helps me keep track of what I have, what I need to maybe replace, and it helps me know what to find. Like when I think, okay, I need some bingo cards, I know exactly where to go to find them. I don't have to rummage through a whole bunch of other things. I like to keep all that kind of stuff together. So I find that really, really helpful. Here's my sewing pattern counter catalog. I store that right there on the shelf. So this box here is all flashcards and bingo cards. And that's pretty much all that is in there. So if I need flashcards, I know I'm going to this box or to the boxed flashcards that I showed you earlier on my shelf. So that way I don't have to label it. I know exactly where it is. And this is all vintage trims. So I also don't mind, like, if the stuff inside the boxes aren't super organized, I don't mind rummaging kind of through stuff a little bit. Sometimes that's just kind of fun. You kind of come across things you forgot you had, depending on what it is. But, you know, as long as it's in a container, it's not just kind of in a random like pile in the corner or something, that it still feels organized, you know. And then over here on this shelf, I am not used to talking this much, and this is hard. I'm like a quiet person. I don't talk a whole lot. So all this talking is hard. So over here I have my vintage boxed cards and postcards mostly. So I can kind of open up some of these quickly for you. Let's see. So these are my blank postcards. I've got a couple boxes of those. The cards in here match what's on the cover there. And sometimes the boxes, I just use like the vintage boxes, and they don't have the original cards inside anymore. So like this box just has some vintage postcards in them, and I just use the box for storage. I've got more Post-it notes here and those boxes. Whoops. And this Quizmo box, I'm actually just storing my vintage like game score sheets in here, and then also pieces of scrapped ledger paper and like old like guest checks and like order forms, petty cash forms, that sort of thing. So storing vintage paper can be tricky because there's so many different kinds and types, and I really do like to keep, like I said, like things together. But sometimes, you know, you can't have a separate container for every single little thing. So like in this box, these are all related enough to me that I can keep them in one box. And they were too big to fit in those 4x6 boxes that I like, those clear containers. So they end up in a box like this. And I'm good with that. And you will see I have another bin in my closet that has even bigger pieces of ephemera that I have not gone through and separated out. So it's like a whole bunch of just kind of mixed up things, but it's all contained to one bin. So I'm okay with that. I will try to slide this out of the way so I can put that away later. So then these big boxes have cards in them, mostly like their original, like the way the previous owners stored them. So they are all different, but they're the long, like rectangular cards, and I love using those in my traveler's notebook journals. And I love the boxes too. Aren't they beautiful? So these are all those kinds of cards. So my smaller greeting cards, the ones that are not rectangular, are in the the 45 record holder thing I showed you earlier. And then all these other cards that are like bigger than that or longer are in these boxes. So those are the two places that I have cards. So sometimes I have things in a couple different spots, but if I don't have more than like 2 spots for something, 2, 3 spots, that I feel like that works for me. And these are all different sized. They're called postalettes. These are these little postcards that have like flip outs on them, and I love using these, and these are unfolded ones, so I love using those in my traveler's notebook journals also. And then on the shelf, I've shared this bin before. This is a greeting card organizer from Michaels, and this just holds my, just in case you haven't seen that little video, this holds all of my small scrap pads. So 6x8 pads and the 6x6 pads all fit in this greeting card organizer. And these are 12x12 paper pads right here. And that's all I have as far as pads go. So those are right here on this shelf. And then underneath the shelf, let me make some little space here. I have soda crates on the bottom. So this soda crate holds big tools, and I love like a big open container, you know, for big pieces like this. Again, like I don't mind rummaging a bit for things, so I just toss them in here. At least I know where everything is, and they're all kind of like similar things. So these are all different kinds of heat tools, my heated craft gun and my glue gun, that kind of thing. And I just put felt feet on the bottom of these soda crates so they slide in and out easily, because my floor is not carpeted, which is really nice and helps keep it cleaner in here, especially with all like the paper and the glue and stuff. And this is a soda crate that I got a long time ago. It was painted when I bought it. I bought it in a vintage shop, so someone else had already kind of DIY'd it. But this one is divided, and I use it to store my stamp stuff. This is all I have as far as stamping stuff goes. And I just used this really when I was Bible journaling more. So I know a lot of people have a lot more stamping supplies. So you might want a different kind of system for that. Like you might need some hardcore like drawers. I've seen all kinds of neat ways to store stamp pads, but I'm not a huge stamper. So, you know, if there's something that, a craft that you sort of want some supplies for, but it's not really your main craft, you probably don't need like a huge system for that. So yeah, so like this, like I said, is just where I keep all of my stamping stuff. So my stamp pads, and I was told that these are okay to store on their sides. So distress ink, and I just use my label maker to put the colors on here. And then when I was Bible journaling, I wanted to get a lot of different colors, but I didn't want to buy like full-size pads, so I just bought the little small distress ink pads and these containers that they go in. So they are right in there, and then just my stamp pads and blocks and like cleaners and things, and like little foam replacements are in that. So that slides right back under here. So that is that bookshelf, and there's not too much else in this room. In the room part, my little chair holds my Betty Crocker and Better Homes and Gardens vintage binders. And over here is where I do all of my photo taking and my videoing. So it is not super, you know, professional of a setup. The window's right there, so it's hard to get the lighting right. But that is my Target desk. And now I just use it, like I said, to take photos because it's white. So it has a nice white, you know, backdrop. And I've got my lights set up. I have 2 LED stands Again, they're not super big. They're not like those big umbrella stands, but I really like don't have room in here for those. So I went with that, and it's not perfect, but it's working okay for now. And then I have a clamp light overhead. So I kind of have light coming from 3 directions there. And then of course the window there, you would think that that would be enough light. It really isn't. It's crazy how much light you need for video. You're probably seeing that now. But yeah, that's where I'm at with that right now. And this right here is my stand that I put my phone into. And I do that for my videos. My still photos, I just hold my phone camera for that. And then I've got a couple foam boards you can see back there. And I use those to reflect light onto what I am photographing. So I'll put the foam board like up in front of me, and then the camera is over top, and I take my photos that way. And excuse our roof. We're having a roof issue right now. My husband's been out there working on it. That's my view out the window. I'm sure my neighbors look up and see me standing in the window and wondering what in the hell is she doing? Yeah, because I'm always standing in the window taking photos or making videos. So I'm sure that's really entertaining. And this is all the stuff for my restock I'm doing this week. Clearly I need to make more tassels. So yeah, I guess that's all I need to say about that setup. And underneath the table, I have my vintage train cases and a vintage suitcase. And I've shared these before on my Instagram, but this one holds all of my sewing needle packets and my little snap cards. And this one has all of my sequins in it. And this one's nice because it has a tray in the top, and then the tray lifts out and you have more storage underneath. And this is all like sequins and glitter in this train case. So I love using vintage containers when I can do it. You know, I mean, I could put all the same stuff in a box, but it's more fun having them in these containers, don't you think? So let me see. I don't know if I can do this with one hand. I actually have my phone set up on I'm holding a tripod, and I'm wondering if I can sit it down here. Let me see. I wanted to show you the suitcase, and I don't know if I can move these train cases with one hand because they're really heavy. Once they have stuff in them, even without stuff in them, they're heavy. But I just wanted to show you this real quick. So let's see. Sorry about that. So this suitcase has my bigger tools, I guess you could call them. My, what do you call that? Scoreboard. So I use that pretty often. So that's right in the top. And this foam mat, I use this a lot when I am making my journals, when I'm poking through the spine to make the holes for sewing. I use this little foam mat. And then I just have like my, envelope making board, and there's one that I've never even opened. That's a gift bag punch board. And I have my guillotine trimmer in here, and this punch that I used when I was doing planners more, the 6-hole punch. So this vintage suitcase is awesome for like these big clunky kind of tools that don't really fit nicely into drawers or bins. So I will just slide these guys over here and put all that away later. And let's see, over here, this is just my desk. This is where I process all my orders. My glass cutting mat, I like having this out also all the time. And I'm lucky having all of these different surfaces. So I can just keep this out all the time. And this is for like if I'm using a fuse tool or when I am cutting my covers off of my little golden books to make journals, I use this glass mat for that. And then I forgot to mention my beloved typewriter. I love having little typewritten words and phrases on things, so that stays out all the time also. And my chair is from IKEA. I have to have this pillow on there so I'm at the right height for my arms on here, because otherwise I was getting shoulder pain, and it's because my arms were not like, I wasn't sitting up high enough for this desk. The chair is not ideal for this particular desk for some reason. Okay, so over here is my Raskog carts from IKEA. And I'm really lucky I was able to get those in these colors, in this like turquoise color. I don't think they sell that color anymore. but they still sell the carts, and the carts are awesome. They hold obviously all kinds of great stuff. You can get little containers to go inside the shelves to like organize your things. But right now, this is working for me. I don't have any of those little divider inside the drawers or the shelves, but I've got my chenille fabrics, and then my other like just kind of scrap fabrics. Handkerchiefs are here. I've got more fabrics on the bottom, and my fabric ribbons are there. I've got kitty clips down on the very bottom. Sewing machine that I still have not set up yet. It's so terrible. I've got this great sewing machine, and well, I don't know if it's great. I've never used the dang thing. So I still need to set it up, like do the whole bobbin and all of that. And I have not set aside time to do that, but I love that it fits on my cart. So I have it right out, and I will be able to use it without having to go to another room or drag the whole thing out. So it fits really nicely on top of the cart. And this is just one of those like little craft mat things for stamping on. And then in the top shelf here, I have all of my journal making supplies. So it's like tools and things that I don't use every day. And all of my journal making stuff is on here. So all the little tools are here. These aren't necessarily for journal making. It's just the smaller tools. I do use this though. My little tweezers, things like that, that I don't use necessarily every day. Like I need my tools on my work table. But I've got my PVA glue that I use for my journals, and I've got elastics for making traveler's notebook covers, and the twine I use to wrap packages. I've got this vintage jelly jar, and that just has my tiny attachers and blades for my paper trimmer in there. And then this little thing, this is kind of like a baby planter, but it's more like almost like a cookie jar. So I don't know exactly how this was sold originally, but anyway, I use this to hold my the thread that I use to make journals, and my awl, and my sewing needles that I use to make journals with. So all of that is right in that little jar. So yeah, I've got my T-squares, and I've got this what do you call that, magic eraser for cleaning covers with. So this is all like journal supplies right there. And then above that, I've got my vintage chalkboard that I love, and the pom-pom garland is from Hobby Lobby. And the little paper garland is something I actually made for my sister's baby shower, and just afterwards stuck it on my chalkboard. And then in the corner, I have this vintage mannequin I've had for a long time. I got that at a local shop, and I just decided to put my vintage apron on there. And I do wear that apron sometimes when I'm working, so I can just pop it off the mannequin there. So this is the closet. Now, this video is getting really, really long. And I don't know if this is boring or what. So I'm kind of feeling like I'm not going to be taking the bins off the shelves in here. But I will tell you basically what I have in them. So we can wrap this up very soon. So this closet, it's kind of hard, you know, doing this on a video, a cell phone camera. I'm trying to get in the closet and show you the closet at the same time. But the closet is, it's a decent like walk-in closet. And the thing that's awesome about it is floor to ceiling shelves. So here it is. There's my little yellow wicker shelf. We have not got hung on my wall yet. That's going to go above the computer desk. But so right here, these are all shoe racks from Target. So those are stacked up there, and each shelf holds 4 12 by 12 iris containers. So let me just show you real quick. I think I counted them just because I was curious. I think I have about 30 of these things. So these are those like 12 by 12 scrapbook cases. I think that's what they're referred to. And I just buy them when they're $3 at Michael's. And I've just accumulated a bunch over the years. So the last couple years. So in here, what I have are my scrapbook collections that are themed to like holidays mostly, or like a specific theme. So for example, on the bottom, I've got this whole shelf here where I'm pointing, those 4 are Christmas, and the 3 on this side are Christmas. All of those are Christmas scrapbook papers and stickers and die cuts. So whether it's October Afternoon or Cartabella or whatever the brand is, they are all in here because they're all Christmas. So I keep all of that together. Down here, this is a fall bin of fall papers and some like embellishments and things. And the 2 above that were Halloween. And oh, I didn't even show you underneath my desk out there. So when we go back out, I will peek at that really quick and show you what's underneath my desk. But I've got 2 bins that are filled with Halloween papers and like die cuts and things. And those are ready to go because it's almost Halloween. So I have those out because I'm going to be working on that very soon. And then up here, these 2 bins here, and I think this one here, are scraps of paper. So making journals, you end up with lots and lots of scraps. And I don't obviously throw those out. They're all pattern paper scraps. And I actually have them separated. So like my Maggie Holmes scraps are in those top 2. And this one here is just non-Maggie Holmes papers that are scraps. And I think the bin right here is leftovers from various junk journal projects that I did last year, like the Alice in Wonderland, and just kind of some random kind of themes. Those are all together in that bin. And then on the middle shelf, I've got the top bin is all baby, like vintage baby ephemera and papers and things. And below that one is Valentine's. And I think that one is actually Christmas paper because I can see some Christmas paper in that one right here. Oops, sorry. And then this one, Holmes stickers and die cuts are in that one. So above that is this container. This is really fun. It's it takes up a lot of room, so it's not super practical, but it is a vintage bread making tray system. So a vintage bakery would have used that, and it really works nicely to hold my small rolls of like jute string and twine and ribbon and rickrack. So that is sitting right on my shelf for that. And then I've got some washi tape in the end right there. And moving up, I've got some books. I've got my 45 records here, my ribbon storage. I love these bins. These are made just for ribbon storage, and it's 2 levels and they kind of snap together and they just hold ribbon really nicely. So these are all my spooled ribbons, and this bottom one is just like small, like bobbin sized ribbons and loose cut ribbons. And these are just empty right here. And yeah, so all of these 12 by 12 bins all have different things in them. I've got like my vintage bigger pieces of ephemera in that center bin. The bottom one has, I think that is book covers that I've cut off, and those are the pages that were left after I took the covers off of the books. And I've got like alpha stickers in one, doilies in another, vintage gift wrap, crepe paper rolls. Over here, these black ones, that is all Tim Holtz stuff, like assemblage and just paper crafting stuff specific to Tim Holtz. I just keep that all there. And moving up on this shelf is all Bible journaling. All 6 of the bins where I'm pointing, those are all Bible journaling materials. And over here are clear plastic sleeves, like to use to make shakers. And up here are binder mechanisms and some empty craft boxes. I don't know what I was going to use those for. And in the bin above that is pieces of chipboard, like that come in like 12 by 12 scrapbook paper when you buy it. I will save enough just to fit in there, and then any more that I get, I just recycle. But like I have so many different kinds of things stored in these bins, and I love them because they can separate out your different types of supplies, but you can still see them, and they're all the same size. So it makes the shelves look like pretty uniform. So it keeps things neat, you know, because it all kind of looks the same, but it's still organized. So, and I don't have any of these labeled just because I I'm familiar with my stuff, so I don't label it, but you could easily label it. And taking advantage of like your floor to ceiling, your vertical height when you have, you know, a lot of stuff. This is a lot of stuff. So it really helps maximize your space if you can utilize like your vertical space. And the very top is just a couple bins of like stuff I've made that I wanted to save, and just some equipment supplies, some sewing supplies over there. I've got extra yarn in all three of these bins here, vintage sheets. And over here are all of my little golden books. And that's it. That's what I have. That is my current collection. And I feel like I'm at a pretty good spot right now with that, because God knows I have not had time to make regular, you know, little golden book junk journals. So I don't think I need to buy any more. So, and it's little golden books here. And then the top shelf is like Wonder Books and Bonnie Books, some of the other publishers. And there's some lower little golden books there. And my Junior Elf books and my Whitman books are on that little yellow wicker shelf I showed you a minute ago. And then over here is this horrible, ugly corner of suitcases, because we don't have anywhere else to store our suitcases and sleeping bags. They're in this closet. So that's fine. I don't need the space myself. So that's just kind of where we keep all that stuff. And I've got a bag of bags there. So I actually hang a bag on my work table on that little handle that cranks my table up and down. And I put all my paper scraps in there while I'm working. And then I just empty it in my recycle bin downstairs when I'm done. But I didn't have that, I didn't have a bag hanging out there when I was showing you my desk. My die cut machine is on this shelf here, and a little bin of dies. I don't use that a whole lot, but it is a really awesome little machine. So I have that there. My sewing machine pedal is sitting on there. I've got vintage index cards and time cards and tags in those bins. And this is my die cut storage. So I showed a video on Instagram not too long ago, I think on my IGTV channel, yeah. And these are my little drawer units from the Container Store. And I really love these for storing fussy cut, die cuts, that kind of thing, in all of those bins. These are all empty. I kind of am thinking I might put my beads in these, but I'm not sure yet. So those are just kind of hanging out on the side empty there. I've got clear stamps in that floral bin, and I actually have Christmas ephemera. I had to open that box. I did not know what was in that. And I have some Christmas ephemera in that. I probably should label that box since I don't use it that often. I forget what's in there. I need to go back and do that. And I was just going to show you really quickly back up at the top, that bin right there, the little polka dot bin, those are all clear stamps and foam stamps, just kind of lined up in that bin. And those binders, the striped binder on the very, very top are stencils, like big stencils. And these three little binders right here, the two gold and the black, all have different like rubber stamps or foam clear stamps. And small stencils are in like photo sleeves in those binders. I'm not a big stamper, so I don't have a lot of stamps. I will probably actually go through those at some point and probably get rid of a lot of them. And then I've got two of my my gratitude documented binder and my Advent binder. Those are up there on that shelf. And the only other thing in here is, I'm trying to scoot out so we can see. Oh, those bins over there. What's over here? Waiting to hang those up. These bins right here, this bin is all Christmas books. And below that, I have scraps. So this bin right here is all scraps left over from cutting sewing pattern envelopes and ledger paper. Kind of two sort of random things to put together, but I end up with a lot of scraps from making journals. So my Kitty Dory journals. So that bin right there is like all Kitty Dory scraps that are not pattern paper, basically. My laminator next to that. And then the bottom is just a file box with my like business kind of papers in it. And the last thing, I'm trying to squeeze them in the doorway here. I can barely reach. So this is kind of neat. This is actually, may go inside the closet. This is a bread bin that I got at Goodwill. You can tell I got it at Goodwill because they used a Sharpie to put the price on the lid and I can't get it off. Why do they do that? My sewing patterns are in this bin. So that is the other place where I keep sewing patterns. And this bin down here is just a file, like a hanging file box. And all my pattern tissue and pattern directions are in that box. And down here are just more beads, my like gumball beads. So coming back out in the room, look, now I made a mess. All that stuff's gonna have to get put away. I never showed you under my desk. So just really quickly, so there's the 2 Halloween bins right there. So all this stuff is ready to be, I'm going to make a couple of Halloween journals and a bunch of ephemera kits, vintage Halloween ephemera kits. So that's out, getting ready for that. And my doll cradle holds vintage books that are not my little golden books or my elf books, not readers. So it's kind of like nonfiction books, that kind of thing, dictionaries, music, sheets, tall, like the giant books. My Sears catalog is in the back there. So that's all in that cradle. And then I've got 2 bins under here, a little hard to see here. Let me move my chair out. So this needs a home, but right now the top of this bin is all of my vintage children's like linen books, the oversized linen books and like coloring books. So those are all right there. I need to find a home for them. And this bin is all of my vintage cookbooks that are not like the binder, like the Betty Crocker binders. These are just like the smaller cookbooks. And I've got magazines behind them. I'm not going to get this down because it's really heavy. And on the bottom are just some vintage books that are like nonfiction or actually fiction books mostly. And I guess I just was thinking I might use the pages in them, like for backgrounds. Or I think when I first started making journals, I thought maybe I would use those to make journal covers, but I probably won't. So I'm probably going to actually empty that bin out and use it for something else and maybe donate those books or something. So I think we are at the end, an hour and 15 minutes later. Oh, if you've hung in this long, thank you so much for watching. There's my little mobile. I didn't even do the little shelf up there. Gosh, there's more in here than I thought. I thought this room was so small, this would be like a 30-minute tour. My voice is getting scratchy now, but just really quickly, this shelf, I've got my little mobile that I love that hangs over my desk, and just mostly decorative. I've got some like planter clips in those little vintage milk cups, and my little stove, that's just decorative. And over here is where I have some of my planners and journals. So that's all that is on that shelf there. And yeah, so if you have any questions, I'm sure there's something you saw maybe I didn't mention, or you want to know something more about how I'm organizing my stuff, please let me know. Ask me any questions. I'm happy to answer. And I really do appreciate you checking this out. This was much longer than I thought it was going to be. But I really, I love watching tours myself, so this was fun, and I just thank you so much for being here. So let me know if you have any questions, or if you wanted me to do something like more in depth on any particular thing that you saw. So I will see you guys soon. Take care.